appreciate you joining us today. I want to welcome you into Aspire to Retire with Ralph and Tim Short, the father-son team, and the financial advisors behind Welcome Home Financial Partners. You can find out more about Ralph, Tim, the entire team on the website. That is welcomehomefp.com. You can also give a call, set up a time to schedule an appointment with them, a conversation, complimentary second opinion. If you just want a second set of eyes on your plan, that number is 804-635-3550. Once again, 804-635-3550. My name is Chris Swan. I'm pleased to be joined with the father-son team behind Welcome Home Financial Partners. Ralph and Tim, glad to be with you once again. How you doing today?
Doing great. How about yourself?
Doing well. You know, it is summertime as we're recording right now, and I feel like school's starting early, by the way. So as we're winding down, we're trying to make sure that we get the most of it for my son. And a lot of that involves traveling and going to parks. And that actually ties into the first thing I want to talk about here. A lot of families include a trip to amusement parks or theme parks as part of their summer fun. And, you know, you look at the base ticket price, which can exceed $500, by the way, for a family of four. And, you know, you say, okay, yeah, I can handle that. But then you tack in all the other things like parking, fast passes, food, drink, not to mention the souvenirs, and travel. And you're looking at perhaps a small fortune. So in retirement planning, you know, there are also extras that you don't see coming until you're facing it, until it's too late. How do you help prevent that financial roller coaster?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. I must kind of compare it to going to the movies at this point. But, you know, schools are starting earlier and earlier. I feel like the summers are getting shorter and shorter, which good thing I'm not in school anymore because I'd be kind of upset about that. But, you know, there's a lot that comes into it because you're right. You know, you go to Kingsman, you go to Busch Gardens, you know, the tickets aren't too bad. But once just the food alone, you know, that's going to double your price. So there's a lot of things to take into consideration. And I think a lot of people kind of overlook it because the amusement park ticket essentially is their investment account, their statement, right? So they're looking at it like, hey, okay, good, I got some good money here. But then the next thing you know, taxes are going to come into play. And I think that's one of those things. I'd relate that to the hamburger that you're going to buy at the amusement park, right? So you're going to end up spending, you know, $10, $12, maybe $15 for the burger. Well, guess what? That's going to be the same thing when it comes to taxes. And, you know, we have this conversation quite a bit with most people that come in and, you know, their retirement accounts are all pre-tax vehicles. And little do they know that all the money that's in that account is not necessarily theirs, right? Because as soon as they start taking out distributions, guess who's going to have their hand out, right?
Yeah.
So we've got to make sure that we account for that. But, you know, emergencies are going to come up that are always overlooked. You know, whether it's health, whether it's, you know, helping out a child or a grandkid or whatever the case may be, because life's going to throw curveballs at you, right? And I know Dad loves I know he loves riding the roller coasters, not just in the summertime, but especially when Kings Dominion does their little Christmas town. He loves when it snows and he's on top of the highest hill. I'm just kidding. Dad does not like amusement
I can see it in his eyes, yeah.
Yeah. So, but you know, there's a lot of things that come into it. So, you know, retirement, you know, it needs to be fun. It needs to be like an amusement park, but there's a lot of things to consider.
I would say for most people, they just need to understand there's a lot more than just financial hidden costs and things like that in your retirement, because guess what? You have to figure out what your lifestyle is going to be now from a different perspective, because now it's every day is a Saturday. You get to plan out what you want to do. And if you want to tie it back to amusement park, and yes, Tim, I was trying to figure out who your father was when you were talking about I enjoyed the amusement park so much. But, you know, it is a lot about the money. You have to be able to, I mean, life costs you, no matter what age and stage that you're in, it's still going to cost you some money. Are you prepared for that? I mean, a lot of things that we talk to people about is that, but what are you going to do? What's your purpose in retirement? You know, all these things that you want to do or you planned on doing is going to cost you some money. But exactly how do you want to live your life? Are the things that is important to you included in your financial plan, your retirement income plan, things of that nature? That's the first step you kind of want to figure out is, are you going to be happy in retirement? Yeah, it sounds pretty good, but what do you have to do when you wake up in the morning? You don't have to go to work, so what are you going to do? So those are some things that, to me, it's a hidden cost, a hidden thing that most people don't talk about. You know, we'll talk about healthcare costs, yeah, as we mature. I'm not going to say older because some of us don't get older at all, you know? Right, Chris? I mean, you're still 20-some years old, right?
I wish. Yeah, my knees don't say that, but yeah.
But, things are going to change in your life. It's going to be, your probably health is going to deteriorate. You won't have to go to doctors more. I remember one of our clients when we were talking, he said, you know why you have so much time in retirement? And I'm like, no, why? He said, so you can go to the doctors so many times, because that's all we do is when we get older, we have to go to the doctors. We've got 8 or 10 appointments to the doctor. So those are some things that people really don't think about. And yes, and Tim brought up a good point. There are family crises in there. What you don't want to do is make sure that it affects you financially down the road, because we all don't know what life's going to bring us 20 years from now. You need to have some money there. So be prepared to help them out when they need help. But there's a big difference between a hand out and a hand up. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people need to really understand that because, we all want to help our kids. We all want to help our grandkids. However, there comes a point where you don't want to be detrimental to yourself and your financial well-being. And a lot of people need to understand this. Cost of living is going to go up every year.
Yes.
We don't know what, but it's going to go up. I can go back to the 70s when I used to complain that 25 cents a gallon for gas was a lot when I was in high school, and it was back then. But today, 25 cents a gallon, people would die for that, in my opinion.
Oh, they would line up for miles and miles for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, those are all some things that, in my opinion, people need to understand that life's going to throw curveballs at you. Inflation is going to happen. When, we don't know. How much, we don't know. Just be prepared for it. And, like Tim said, taxman's always going to be there. I don't care what your age is. I don't care what status you're in. It's always going to be there. Are you prepared? Have you talked to somebody that can help you reduce that? Because the government is not telling you have to pay the maximum that they want. You just have to pay the legal amount that you're entitled to pay, and that is it.
I love how you say entitled to pay taxes. That was a beautiful phrase. But, when it comes to like the amusement park rides, your I don't know what your average roller coaster is going to be. 60 seconds, 90 seconds probably on the top end. But guess what? Hopefully in retirement, it's going to last you longer than 60 to 90 seconds. So
I hope so.
We all hope so. You don't want to walk out the door and not even make it to your vehicle, right? So I think it's important to plan for that longevity because like Dad's talking about, if you're 20 years in retirement, for example, $50,000 today is probably going to be close to $90,000 in a 20-year period, right? So you think about that, that's almost double in 20 years. Is your plan, built to withstand that? And hopefully people live longer than 20 years in retirement. And for sure, hopefully more than 60 to 90 seconds.
Whenever I go to a park with my son, whether it's a theme park or even go into the museum, my son always likes to go to the information center and get a map. He just likes looking at them and seeing where everything is. And we kind of plan our trips around based on that. It's the same sort of thing when it comes to retirement, Ralph, as you said, they can't, you're not here to tell them what they should be doing in retirement. They're probably going to bring that to the table, hopefully. Your job is to figure out how to help them get there. That is where that retirement roadmap comes into play. And there will be detours along the way. Maybe you suddenly at the theme park, you go, actually, the line is short for this ride. We're going to go do this instead. Okay, you veer off course. How do you get back on track? In retirement, there are going to be things that take us off course. Birth of a grandchild, market downturns. They're not all good. They're not all bad. But if it takes you away from the main course to your plan, how do you get back on track? Again, if you have that roadmap in play, it's a lot easier to navigate. And the team at Welcome Financial Partners can help you create or help maintain that retirement roadmap if you just reach out and give a call, 804-635-3550. You mentioned the unknowns in retirement. We certainly don't know what taxes are going to be in the future. We kind of have an idea of what they're going to be for the next couple of years, developing a plan around that. We don't know what the market is going to do tomorrow, honestly, but we do know, that there will be fluctuations over the course of your retirement. So you're going to factor in those ups and downs and bank in that plan using experience, not guesses, not crystal balls or anything. You're not going to find that at any of the offices at Welcome Home Financial Partners, but using the experience and the data to help you create that plan and hopefully to design a strategy that's best suited for you. Again, all you have to do to get started, give a call, 804-635-3550, or you can go online to the website at welcomehomefp.com. Let's say somebody does step away from their job, perhaps to another job, and one of the bigger questions I think they have is, what are you going to do with that 401k? What options do people have when it comes to a 401k at their previous job, and what are the pros and cons of them?
Well, I think in the last 5 years, there's been a lot of job hopping. I hate to use that phrase, but I think there's been a lot of people, seeking other opportunities, whether, they're upset that they had to go back into the office and they're trying to find something virtual again or whatever the case may be. I think one of the biggest mistakes that we see when it comes to our industry is people will cash out their 401ks, right? Because they see that number and they're like, well, guess what? I'm not 59 and a half. I know I don't have access to it, but now I'm leaving. Now I could potentially pull that money out and cash out and do the things that I want. We see it quite a bit. One of the biggest cons of that, obviously, is if you're below 59 and a half, you've got that 10% penalty. When it comes down to the tax man, right? Most people have pre-tax dollars in their 401k. So if you've got $100,000 in there, you're probably only going to keep 70 grand, give or take, just depending on what the rest of your income looks like. That's one of the biggest things that we've seen. And we can tell you horror stories because there are people who don't seek that advice. I know, shocker, right, Chris? So, we've seen people that, hey, their spouse died. We had a lady, this has been some time, I'd say probably 10 years ago. And she came in and her husband actually worked for Philip Morris and did pretty good. And he had a fairly substantial account. Well, he passed away. She didn't seek any other advice. Instead of just going out and filing the death claims, getting the money, she cashed out his profit sharing account. Little did she know the tax ramification until the following year. And I think she probably came in 3 years after, if I get this story right. I think it was about 3 years after this had happened. And she was still paying the IRS back. So I think that's one of the biggest things that we see. I hate to use the word greed, but I think a lot of that comes into play when they say, hey, I know I've got this account. This is my money. I'm going to cash it out. I need to do these home renovations. We see that quite a bit. Hey, I want to pay off my house. Well, guess what? There's going to be some repercussions to that. So you got to be careful of that. Now, a lot of people, too, also just leave it where it sits, right? Because they don't want to take the time. They don't want to find other options. The cons to that is that you're only limited to what you have available inside that account. If you roll that into your own IRA, you've got, I shouldn't say endless, but you've got a lot more options to you. Plus, you can still make contributions to it. You're not going to be able to make contributions to an old 401k. If you're not there, you can't do that anymore. So there's a lot to do with that. And these are a lot of the phone calls that we've been taking over the past couple of years have been, hey, I've got this old account. What do I need to do with it? Should I roll it into my new account? Should I, cash out? There's a lot of things that are coming to that.
One of the things, though, I want to correct Tim on this one thing. It was that person's advisor that told her to cash out that 401k. So those are the type of advice that is out there that you really don't want to listen to. So you might need a second opinion if somebody tells you that. But the other thing about leaving your money with the old company or whatever, you never will have any options on where it's going to go other than if they choose to go from one account, benefit administration custodian to another. Guess what? You don't have any choice on that. The only thing that you might be able to do is change the investments within that new custodian account. However, a lot of people they move when they change jobs. It's shocking, isn't it? I remember a nurse that came in, she had changed jobs 5 times over the past 25, 30 years. Okay. She was young. She kept moving up from one hospital to another. And then, of course, they get being bought out all the time. She said, I got all these amounts, but I'm not sure where they all are. And so I'm sitting there going through everything. By the time we got done, 3 of her accounts, because they had fees in it and she wasn't putting any money in it and it wasn't growing like she thought it was supposed to, guess what? There was no money left in those accounts. So that's something else that people need to be aware of. If you do leave your account there and you have moved from one job to another, maybe you moved residence, they don't have your correct address. So you may not ever get any statements and things like that. So that's another con that you need to be aware of because, yes, there are going to be fees when you leave your money anywhere you go. How much it is, we don't know because every company is a little different. But at that point in time, don't you want to have control over your money instead of somebody else? And as fiduciaries, that's what we want to make sure people understand it. It's all about making you whole, making sure you know where your things are located, and making sure they're going to be there when you need them. Because why save the money if all of a sudden it's not going to be there when you thought it was going to be there? So those are all things that we sit down and talk with people about. Even during the roadmap, we sit there and talk to them about where your money's located. And some of them, they know where it is, and they want to leave it there. That's fine. It's your choice. Mm-hmm. But just understand what your options are. And another thing I always alert people to, make sure if you have any life changes, if you got married, if you got divorced, if you had kids, make sure you have correct beneficiaries on all these accounts, no matter where they are. Because guess what? There's a lot of people that forget about that, and they may have left it to their parents who are now been dead for 15 years, and now all of a sudden they have some issues and they can't figure things out, or if they pass away, now we can't do a lot of different things in making sure that money gets to where they go, because there's a lot more complications at that point in time.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point. I mean, a couple of years back, the federal TSP program, I mean, they were changing platforms or systems or what have you, and a lot of the beneficiaries didn't actually carry over. So It's always important, and these are, one of the things that we implement in our review process is making sure that beneficiaries are up to date, because you can say, well, yeah, I set it up. Well, guess what? I think they only sent out an email, I guess, regarding that. And there's a lot of people that, and I'm one of them on my personal email. I'm not quite as good, but it often gets overlooked. So, one of the worst things that could potentially happen is, hey, they changed their platform, beneficiaries didn't carry over, you pass away, and now where does money go, right? So, but touching on the 401k, I had this conversation with a lady this week. And not just, pros and cons to moving it or leaving it or cashing out or what have you, but also too is, when did you pick the investment options? What's the strategy behind it? And I remember looking her dead in the eye and I said, okay, who picked these selections and when did they do that? And she was like, well, it was me, and it was about 20 years ago. And I said, yep, that's pretty common, right? And I think that's where a lot of people get it wrong is, if they started, in her case, she was at Capital One, and when she started Capital One, that's when she picked them, and nothing ever changed. So that was quite some time ago. So there could be some other opportunities out there. And, this is one of the things that we do for folks. So I think it's really important that you pay attention to what you're doing, especially as you're getting closer to retirement. It's not the same thing as you were when you were 20 or 30 years old. So it's really important to make sure you seek that second opinion.
So are you telling me that your risk profile over the last 25 years probably will change, or is it still the same as when you were 20 years old?
Oh, I'm sure it's changed. We're not always going to be forever young like Chris.
Right. That is correct. But
as fiduciaries, Ralph and Tim Short, they're not going to tell you what you need to do, what you have to do with your plans, your accounts, your pensions, things like that. They will recommend things on that they believe will work in your best interests. And if you make other decisions, they'll say, this is what it will look like. They want to make sure that you are informed, that you, at the end of the day, make that informed decision. But everything that they recommend is with your best interest at heart. So when it comes to 401ks, obviously cashing out is the least favorable option. If you happen to need that money for some reason, it's not out of the question, but just understand those penalties, understand those taxes. If it is leaving it at your old employer, I mean, that is something to do, but understand, again, the fees, not being able to have access to it. If it's rolling it over into your current 401k or rolling it over for self-directed IRA, what those options are going to look like, what the pros and cons of that is going to be. That is a conversation they can have with you, they will have with you, and it's going to depend on person to person, of course. So that customized approach is what you get at Welcome Home Financial Partners. And it all begins by going to the website, welcomehomefp.com. You could schedule a time there, find out about their First Friday events they have going on, the first Friday of every month, obviously. Or you can give a call, 804-635-3550. Again, 804-635-3550. The show, of course, is called Aspire to Retire. And everyone does aspire to do so, I think. But there was a new study that said if you delay your retirement by just a year, it could show a benefit of $100,000 to $200,000 over a 20-year retirement. No small amount by any means. One more year at work would add income, healthcare benefits, 401k matching. It also would push off Medicare premiums, and it would increase your Social Security check at the end of the day. Do you think hearing this, knowing this, would change anyone's mind about their retirement date?
Oh, it absolutely does. And I will tell you that we have this conversation a lot, right? So there's a lot of people this year I've deemed a year of change, but I feel like every year I keep saying the same thing. So there's been a lot of changes. There's been a lot of people who have really kind of opened up to, okay, hey, I'm getting closer. Maybe I should check in and, seek that advice and see where I'm at, because we'll see it quite a bit where people don't really realize how good a shape they really are to where they could potentially retire now. And then there's the other side of the coin where there could be a lot of people that say, hey, I got $1 million, but I have really bad spending habits. And we talked about the new phrase of the year, I guess, last week we were talking about the Amazonnesia, right? So, there could be some issues there. So, it's really important to seek that advice, because I can tell you, if people know that they can retire now, they usually will prolong their career, right? Because it's a lot easier to say, it's a lot easier to put up with the mess at work when you know that you can walk right then and there, right? So I think, most people will be a little bit better off delaying a little bit longer than normal. I shouldn't say normal. There is no normal anymore. But knowing that you can really will help your mindset as far as your career is concerned. And I think that's really important for most people, because there's a lot of people that do enjoy working. I mean, I can't tell you how many times we meet with folks and they're like, hey, I always have to be doing something. Like, I'm not going to sit at home. I'm not going to sit on the sofa. I'm not going to order takeout and have it delivered. It's not going to be Uber Eats and DoorDash every day. I need to stay busy. Well, if you want to stay busy right now, you're making a pretty decent salary. Why change that, right? So if you know that you're in a good position to retire, why not continue to work now, knowing that at any point in time you've had enough, or your health declines or whatever, you've got the ability to change.
But I would say, let's take the flip side of the coin. That's what I'm going to say, because in our area, Chris, with a lot of federal government employees and stuff, they wanted to continue to work, and all of a sudden they're probably not going to be able to work because of the environment that we're living in. They're giving basically a 30-day, 60-day, 90-day, whatever it is, saying, hey, you need to retire. So you need to be prepared for that. And how are you going to do that? Or have you actually thought about retiring? Whether you want to or not, some days you may not have that choice. So you need some professional guidance to get you through those ups and downs, because not only is it going to be financial, it's going to be a lot of mental anguish to you. Like, what am I going to do now? I thought I was going to be able to work for another 5 to 7 years, and then I could retire. Now I have to leave. So what am I going to do? It does put a lot of pressure on your mental stability and your mindset.
Wouldn't you like to know? Wouldn't you like to know that you could be able to retire, at this moment, if you decided to walk away from the workforce, that you would be okay because you've had the numbers run and this is what it will look like if you continue to work a little longer? It makes it that much better if that situation is taken out of your hands, as we've seen here in the area recently. If you're not necessarily forced into retirement, but forced out of that particular job, to know that, I've run the numbers, and while not ideal, I'll still be okay, or I can make this work in the meantime. That is the power of having a team like Welcome Home Financial Partners on your side, running those numbers, especially as you get closer and closer to retirement, that red zone, the 5 years prior to and the 5 years after, making sure that as it gets closer and closer, you have everything buttoned up. Same sort of thing as like a final approach when a pilot is getting ready to land, making sure that everything looks bright so that they can land comfortably. That's what you want to do in retirement. But again, on hopefully on your terms. But it starts with having a plan. It starts with having that retirement roadmap run. And that's what the team at Welcome Home Financial Partners does. All you need to do to get started, set up a time to speak with them, have that conversation, 804-635-3550. Or you can go online to the website to find out more about them. Listen to previous editions of the show as well. That is at welcomehomefp.com. As always, we want to thank you for joining us here on Aspire to Retire with Ralph and Tim Short of Welcome Home Financial Partners. Really do appreciate you taking the time. Hope you have a great week ahead of you. Gentlemen, appreciate the time as always. As we wrap up, I want to leave you with the final word.
Thank you, Chris. We appreciate your time as well. We talked a lot about, job hopping and leaving jobs and changing careers. If you're one of those folks that have left a 401k or a 403b or any type of employer plan where it sits just for simplicity, pick up the phone, give us a call. We'd love to discover some opportunities for you. Once again, we appreciate everybody listening, and take care.
All content is for information purposes only. It is not intended to provide any tax or legal advice or provide the basis for any financial decision, nor is it intended to be a projection of current or future performance or indication or future results. Opinions expressed herein are solely those of Welcome Home Financial Partners and Welcome Home Wealth Advisors, LLC. The information contained in this material has been derived from sources believed to be reliable, but is not guaranteed as to accuracy and completeness and does not purport to a complete analysis of the materials discussed. All information and ideas should be discussed in detail with your individual advisor prior to the implementation. Each individual investor's situation is different, and any ideas provided may not be appropriate for your particular circumstance. Advisor services are offered by Welcome Home Wealth Advisors, LLC, a registered investment advisor in the state of Virginia. Being registered as an investment advisor does not imply a certain level of skill or training. Insurance products and services are offered through WPI Holding, Virginia Insurance License Number 138509, an affiliated company. The information contained herein should in no way be construed or interpreted as a solicitation to sell or offer to sell advisory services to any resident of any state other than the state of Virginia or where otherwise legally permitted. Welcome Home Wealth Advisors, LLC, and Welcome Home Financial Partners are not affiliated with or endorsed by the Social Security Administration or any government agency.